We often hear politicians say that the government should be run like a business. It's one of those intuitive sayings that many Americans nod along in agreement with. Part of that business model is the push towards privatization of government services in order to save money and improve quality, and we've seen a lot of that in recent decades. But can public services with a relatively stable demand be run like a business? And more importantly, should they?
Only if it's the consumers, not the government, who are pulling the strings. Failing to understand the difference between formal government services, government-subsidized private services, and truly private services is why so many people are missing the mark in this discussion. This video was brought to you by the PhoneMe app. Head to the link in the description to download PhoneMe, and stay tuned to learn about the new features that have been added to the app to help you stay in contact with your favorite creators. Hello everyone, this is My Two Cents. Recently, a number of people sent me the link to a video that was put out by the YouTube channel Knowing Better, called Privatizing Public Schools, Prisons, and Schools. In great detail, this video attempts to show that public services, on average, perform better than their private counterparts. In particular, public schools outperform charter schools. It also contends that right-wing political groups like Prager University are deliberately manipulating statistics in order to make it appear otherwise. However, this video is not a response to every specific point in Knowing Better's video. I actually wouldn't quarrel with many of the points he made about statistical trends. Rather, I want to explore something that I think is being missed by him and by PragerU. The question we should be asking is, what does it really mean to privatize something anyways? And is there fundamentally any difference between the government doing something directly through government salaried employees, or doing something indirectly by using taxpayer funds to pay an otherwise private entity to do something on the government's behalf? Let's start by considering the following clip from Knowing Better's video.
Schools can't grow like a business. If you have a burger joint in town and a second burger joint opens up, overall demand for burgers increases. Both businesses will benefit from competition, but when it comes to schools, if you open a second one, you're just cutting the student population and thus the demand in half. Unless your business plan includes encouraging parents to have more kids, in which case, you're playing the long game. The demand for schools is relatively stable over time. You can cut costs and improve quality all you want, the student population is basically the same.
I actually agree with what he says here so far as it goes. There is a fundamental difference between demand for burgers and demand for primary education. But the question is, why is there a difference? Many people love burgers, and for that reason, entrepreneurs in a free market will open restaurants that provide them. Competition ensures that only those entrepreneurs that provide the highest quality burgers at the lowest cost to their consumer base will be able to survive. However, the same cannot be said for businesses that sell eggplant sandwiches. Why? Simply put, because there's not nearly as much demand for eggplant sandwiches as there is for burgers. But how does demand for education differ? In a free market, apart from government intervention, parents would still have demand for primary education, because they want to set their children up for success as adults. But demand for education today is driven primarily by the fact that there are laws in place that require children to go to school. And not just any school. Their education must come from particular institutions or programs that have been accredited by agencies with the government's blessing. Whether that school is a public school, charter school, private school, or a homeschool program. Thus, the reason that demand for primary education stays basically the same over time is because parents cannot do a cost-benefit analysis regarding whether or not to send their kids to school, and for how long. For the record, I'm not suggesting that parents should not send their kids to school. I'm simply pointing out that demand has been artificially fixed by government intervention.
Private schools have existed basically forever, certainly longer than any public school. And this shouldn't surprise you, but a large number of private schools are religious in nature. Public schools in America didn't really come about until after Reconstruction. By World War II, just about every kid had access to public education.
Also true. However, since the American public school system as we know it today didn't really become mainstream until that time, we should expect that education standards should be drastically better today than they were in, say, the mid-1800s or 1900s, if it is the case that public schooling is superior to private education. However, as Samuel Blumenfeld and Alex Newman have documented in their book Crimes of the Educators, American literacy and academic performance has been steadily declining and is not nearly at the level that students just 100 years ago possessed. While high school students in the 1800s regularly learned Latin and Greek as part of their regular curriculum, nearly half of the adult American population today is functionally illiterate. Even today, truly private schools, those that charge tuition and receive no taxpayer funds, consistently have students that perform above the national average, according to the National Center for Education Statistics.
But in the mid-90s, a third option opened up: charter schools.
Depending on state law, these schools can be started by parents, teachers, nonprofit groups, corporations, or even government organizations.
Remember this one, I have a feeling it'll be important later. Charter schools are privately run and publicly funded.
Now, did you catch that? Privately run and publicly funded. In other words, the employees of the school are effectively government contractors. They aren't public employees like teachers at public schools, but the government, not the individual consumers, is providing the funding for these schools to stay operational. Taxpayers are footing the bill, just as they are for public schools, and to the parents who choose to send their kids to these charter schools, it seems just as free as the public schools. Unlike truly private schools, who must convince the parents that it is worth it for them to pay out of their own pocket for their children to attend, charter schools need to convince the government that the taxpayer should foot the bill. How exactly does this qualify as privatization? As author Ryan McMacken notes, this sort of privatization simply means handing over taxpayer money to private companies to do what government employees had been doing. In the next part of the video, Knowing Better sets out to demonstrate that PragerU deliberately cherry-picked data in order to make it look like charter schools improve student performance, and I'd have to say I agree with his assessment. There's not currently any reason to think that charter schools perform better than public schools. However, I'm not concerned since, as I've just shown, charter schools are effectively no different than public schools when it comes to incentives. It is the taxpayer, not the individual consumer, footing the bill.
So, simple question. On average, nationwide, are charter schools outperforming public schools? PragerU would have you believe that they are. But here are the 4th, 8th, and 12th grade math scores for every year available. And here are the 4th, 8th, and 12th grade reading scores for every year available. Not once have charter schools done better than public schools, but in 2017 they finally tied in 4th grade reading. Is it reasonable to assume that eventually charter schools will surpass public schools? Probably. But when PragerU tells you that they already are, they're lying. Not all charter schools are bad. In fact, statistically, 17% of them do better than public schools, and 46% of them perform about the same, while the remaining 37% of them perform significantly worse. Just to put that into perspective, if you have a child in public school and you're thinking about moving them to a charter, roll a die and try to predict the number.
Like I said, I don't necessarily have any disputes to make. There is more to be said about school performance than simply test scores, but let's talk about private schools. You know, the ones that actually have to convince parents to pay for their services out of their own pocket. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, the same organization that Knowing Better just referenced, private schools outperform public schools in the standardized tests that are given at grades 4, 8, and 12. In the words of the Council of American Private Education, students in private schools consistently score well above the national average. At all 3 grades, a significantly higher percentage of private school students score at or above the basic, proficient, and advanced levels than public school students. Now, this isn't the end of the debate. Many will argue that such a metric does not account for student family income levels, race, gender, or any other factors that may be statistically significant in the education debate. But it does show that on the measure that Knowing Better used to show that public schools are outperforming charter schools, private schools are outperforming them both. So the question must be asked, is it the case that privatization produces better quality services? Well, if by privatization you mean that the government gives taxpayer money to otherwise private entities to perform a service that was previously provided by government employees, then clearly the answer is no. However, this isn't surprising. In this case, it is still government bureaucrats, not individual consumers, who make the decisions about who to fund and how much money to give them. If and when it becomes clear that one of these government contractors is performing substandard and wasting money, it will require a long process of meetings and approvals by government employees to end the contract. And these employees often have hundreds of other matters occupying their time. So it's not surprising that ineffective spending can continue for years before it's finally dealt with. In the meantime, parents sending their children to charter schools aren't actually feeling the hit to their own wallets, so they won't be as inclined or urgent about changing their child's school, even if there are news reports and rumors that the school is underperforming. If, on the other hand, by privatization, you mean allow individuals to decide if they are going to send their children to school and where to send their children to school, then it would seem that the answer is yes. Privatization does provide better quality services. Even setting aside the fact that private schools consistently outperform public and charter schools on standardized tests, it's not hard to realize that private schools really do have to care about the desires of parents and the performance of students overall. It's the parents they have to convince to pay, not government employees. And unlike government employees, parents can pull their children and their funding at a moment's notice if they're unhappy with the services the school is providing. As I said before, there is little dispute about the fact that Americans are getting dumber with every passing generation ever since the modern public school system was put into place. And this runs counterintuitive if it really is the case that public schools inevitably produce better results than private schools. Before we go, a quick word from our video sponsor, PhoneMe. PhoneMe is a smartphone app that provides an easy way to personally interact via phone call or messaging with your favorite social media personalities, service providers, coaches, and even celebrities. By using the app, you can contact any person who uses the service by paying a particular rate per minute of talk or per digital message. Right now, My 2 Cents is available on PhoneMe, and you can send me a message for free right now by using the code 2cents. You're guaranteed to have a response from me within 24 hours of sending the message. In addition, PhoneMe has just upgraded their services to allow content creators to post exclusive content to anyone who follows them on the app, which I'll be doing from this point forward. I receive numerous comments on every video, and even more direct messages through Twitter and other platforms, more than I can possibly respond to, and time I spend responding to your comments is time I'm not spending working on videos or accomplishing other tasks that are necessary to keep my channel running. If you're really interested in communicating with me, but aren't interested in becoming a monthly patron, PhoneMe is an excellent way to do so while also supporting my channel. So download PhoneMe and like My 2 Cents using the link below to receive exclusive content and communicate with yours truly. In summary, privatization does not mean squat unless it means individual consumers deciding what to spend their money on voluntarily. If the government is the entity fronting taxpayer money to otherwise private corporations, why would you have any reason to think that these corporations would function any differently than a formal government agency? Both entities exist to serve government interests, and both are subject to the corruption that comes when you have consumers with no choice but to fund you. Further, they ultimately suffer from the economic calculation problem that stems from any socially funded program. If we're going to fight for privatization of public services, let's fight for real privatization. And that is My 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. Thanks everyone for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like, subscribe, and hit the bell to receive notifications of new uploads. And if you're a fan of my channel, please consider supporting me on Subscribestar, Bitbacker, or Patreon. For as low as $1 a month, you'll receive access to patron-exclusive videos, earn the right to participate in patrons-only live streams, join my patrons group chat on Twitter and Discord, and numerous other rewards. Also, be sure to subscribe to my gaming channel for a chance to hang out and chat during gaming streams. Uploads are every Thursday and Saturday, so stay tuned for more videos.